evening, and thanks for watching Rising. You are tuning into our special coverage of the vice presidential debate. We have just seen the first half of it, and I thought so far it's been a very substantive debate, very policy-focused. They started right off the bat getting into foreign policy with the news coming out of the Middle East today, war between Israel and Iran, Iran striking Israel, and both candidates asked how they would handle that situation if they were in power. Would we support Israel striking Iran? I think Tim Walz got off to a little bit of a rough start, but he's recovered somewhat since then. J.D. Vance, whatever you think of him, and I've made no secrets of the fact that he was not my preferred vice presidential candidate for the Republicans, is rhetorically very gifted and I think has performed exceptionally well so far. I think Donald Trump has to be impressed with the job he's done and has to be happy about his selection. Tim Walz has done better as it's gone on and as the subject has gone more in his favor for what's being talked about. We just heard a lot on abortion. I'm going to critique the hell out of the moderators in a minute, but what is your takeaway so far?
I think you're right. I mean, compared to the last debate, which was spicy, 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 and it couldn't be more obvious the differences between the two, I think these two were chosen for a reason. They were both chosen because they knew that the white working class voters in the Midwest and the Rust Belt were important. And both of these two have the brand of speaking to those voters. Now, do I believe they both represent them? No, of course not. But they both have that brand in one way or another. And it is absolutely true that they're both vying for that vote, but they're also measured. They need to measure the temperaments of the ticket above them. I mean, Kamala Harris is very measured, but Donald Trump is not, and J.D. Vance, he's been a little bit less coiffed, or however you would say it, like skilled on the campaign trail. He has said some radical stuff when he's out in front of those huge arenas of Trump voters who are spewing things back to him. He doesn't necessarily know how to relate to voters when he's buying donuts and bagels and going out there on the campaign trail, but this is a Yale-educated lawyer. He is somebody who knows how to debate, and, you know, Tim Walz has said that. He knew that this is not a skill that he does best. Tim Walz is the guy who is a retail politician. He does very well on the campaign trail, and he said, I'm not a master debater. I'm not someone like Kamala Harris who's a prosecutor, but I think he's doing great. Nobody is failing here. Both of them are doing a very decent job delivering their messages, whether you agree with them or not. They're doing the job that they need to do.
I mean, I think Tim Walz had a really rough moment tonight when he was confronted with the reality that he had exaggerated or misspoke about whether he was present for Tiananmen Square. This was a scoop that CNN had, Andrew Kaczynski, K-File had earlier today about misstatements that he's made. If he's being honest, he could have just, and he kind of did just admit, I misspoke, but he flubbed it in such a way where it kind of became painfully long, the space they were giving to him to address it. It was kind of the one moment so far where the moderators really turned on Walz. Mostly they've been grilling J.D. Vance, and I think this backfires because at various points it looks like it's 3-on-1, and J.D. Vance is handling himself pretty well, frankly, better than Trump did when he also had the moderators against him. And the moderators at one point did try to do a very weaselly, well, just so we know, what experts say is this, at the having the final word on it, and I think he was right to speak up and say, wait, you said you were not going to do that. Well, you said it was going to be the other candidate was going to do that.
They asked the question, do you believe climate change is a hoax? And he didn't answer it. And then they finalized that with, yes, the majority of scientists, over 99.9% of scientists, believe that climate change is real.
But he didn't really say he disputes that.
Well, he didn't answer the question.
That. Right, he gave policy, so he didn't claim to dispute that climate change is real. He said that these are the policies I would like to pursue in order to have a more environmentally sound public policy, to have clean air, clean water, etc., that we want to do manufacturing in America. Now, I would like to hear more details about how we're going to actually make that happen. I happen to be someone who is very skeptical that we can return manufacturing jobs to the U.S., even with generous subsidies and generous policies because of the EPA, because of labor laws, etc. But J.D. Vance has a different vision for the Republican Party, one that is very pro-labor, one that is very pro-tariff and economic intervention. He actually said the one thing he likes about Biden's policies are the tariffs.
I mean, it's wild because he's literally campaigning against Donald Trump's policies.
Well, Donald Trump is for the tariffs. No, I mean, both sides agree we need more and more tariffs. I don't agree with this policy, but that's what they're saying they want.
Simultaneously, they want to, they're against NAFTA, but they're actually pro-NAFTA. I mean, the problem is with this party is the money that they're taking from big business is against the policies they're trying to win over the working class from. And of course, J.D. Vance is backed by, fully backed by Silicon Valley, libertarian, like yourself. I mean, you're not a Silicon Valley libertarian billionaire, but you're a libertarian.
I'm a libertarian. J.D. Vance is again, pretty
Peter Thiel.
far from. Yeah, Peter Thiel does support him, but
to support the working labor.
Well, I don't know what he wants. I mean, Kamala Harris is supported by wealthy, influential business people too.
But not libertarians.
Soros,
Soros
there's massive amount of. Well, right, I know, but
they're not anti-labor though. You can have some patriotic millionaires out there who understand they come from working class. I'm not saying that all the Democratic parties like that. Trust me.
I mean, I think both parties make rhetorical statements in favor of labor, but don't necessarily have policies that benefit labor. But as a libertarian, I think policies that benefit labor are sometimes not good for all of us as consumers. So it depends on particularly what we're talking about, because I don't think tariffs are, even if tariffs would narrowly benefit one sector of the economy, the number one complaint of Americans right now is that everything costs too much.
Yes,
and that is the burden that tariffs impose. But
in this conversation,
I'm glad to listen to it be adjudicated.
Listen, think back to 2016.
Yeah.
2016 was decided by the working class white voters, and 2020 definitely was.
Yeah.
They're having a very detailed conversation on the vice presidential level, which is unheard of, even 4 years ago. So it's a win for America that we're having these conversations, that they're delving into things more substantive than the presidential debate, which got into, the first one was about golfing. The last one was about eating cats and dogs, and that was pushed, of course, by J.D. Vance. So at least it's more substantive, and that's at least what the American people deserve. But again, are we actually moving the undecideds in this debate?
Well, no. I think the idea that this debate is going to matter very much is, I don't think anyone is really making that case. Although, I don't know, if you were let's say you're someone who was willing to vote for Trump, maybe, or voted for Trump previously but are not sold, and was turned off by the J.D. Vance pick, I think they're doing if you're watching this debate, I think they're doing everything conceivable to win you back as a potential voter for the Republican side. J.D. Vance, despite being very ardently pro-life and very much firmly committed on that issue, did everything he could there in what we just heard before we went to commercial break to reassure pro-choice Americans, women who are uncomfortable with his stance, that they're not an extremist, and that rather it is the Walz and the Democrats that are extremists on that, saying that he knew someone who struggled with making this choice, that we don't want anyone to die because of medical choices, that kind of thing. Up to you if you believe that or accept that answer, but I saw him really making a pitch to reassure those people. You can't deny that he was doing that.
Totally interesting, because in my book, they've lost that cause. They've lost the women who have already decided on choice. That's a done deal. Their game right now is to make sure that the Never Trumpers don't turn out for Kamala Harris. And that didn't seem like the game he was playing. I mean, J.D. Vance has had, his negatives are way above Tim Walz's. Now, they're both more or less within 1 point of favorability, but his negatives are so much higher. So his job was to be like the guy who could handle things, who could actually have a reasonable debate, the guy who's not 2025, the guy who's not saying crazy things on the stump speeches when he's out there, which he has done. The guy who's not wearing eyeliner, the guy who wasn't anti-Trump but now is
eyeliner. Is he wearing eyeliner?
Oh, he's wearing eyeliner. That's a whole thing.
What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it. It's just kind of against what he's standing for. But Tim Walz, on the other hand, I do feel like he could have pushed back harder on 2025. I think he could have pushed back harder on the flip-flopping and pushed back harder against attacks against himself. He's not a natural debater.
He can't fix his biggest liability, which is that he's not Josh Shapiro, in my view. All right, there's more debate to come. We will be watching it, and we'll be reacting to it. When it's done, stay tuned a little bit later for The Hill's coverage of the rest of the vice presidential debate. We'll be back in a little bit.